This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Visit progressive.com to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states or situations. Hey, I'm Candice Lim, and you're listening to ICYMI. In case you missed it, Slate's podcast about internet culture. And today, we are getting physical because joining me is the writer behind the Substack Impersonal Foul and the co-host of the sports gossip show, it's Madeline Hill. Hello, Madeline.
Hi, Candice. Thanks for having me.
Also joining us is a sports reporter and author of Power Plays, a no BS newsletter about women's sports. She's also the guest host of our own Slate pod, Hang Up and Listen. It's Lindsay Gibbs. Hello, Lindsay.
Hi, Candice. So excited to be here.
Now, listeners, you know this show. You know this is not a sports podcast, but even me, a non-sports person, has absolutely seen and reacted to some major sports moments that circulated online this year. So we'll get to that. But first, I'm so happy to have two new friends here on the pod today. And because we're all meeting for the first time, I want to ask the question with a twist, which is, what was your first sports memory? Like, when did sports enter your life and thereby never leave it? Madeline, I'll go to you first.
I think the moment that has always stuck in my mind as someone who loves the gossip that happens off the field in sports was probably standing in the grocery checkout line with my mom and looking at the tabloid covers and seeing David Beckham and Victoria Beckham on the cover. I, as a lover of pop culture, I think from birth, and being obsessed with People Magazine, Us Weekly, reality shows, and also sports, to me, it was like the perfect intersection of my interests as a kid. And I immediately gravitated towards the story. I was fascinated by it as a kid. Did I really understand what a wag was? Probably not. But I knew that I was like, this is sports to me. This off the field nonsense, I'm like, that is what I'm gravitating towards, not what David Beckham's goal scoring skills are. I mean, I know he's good, but I couldn't tell you like how many goals he scored in his career.
Oh, I love that. Okay. Lindsay, what about you?
Oh, gosh. There's so many, like, thinking back, but I really do think it was going to Carolina Panthers games. It was their second year of existence. They had just started in Charlotte. I was in the 5th grade, and my dad had season tickets. He had them through his work. I'd always kind of liked sports. I'd watched a lot of golf and, playoffs with him. But going to those games, they had a really good season that year, including beating the Cowboys in the playoffs to make the NFC Championship game. And I just became a diehard, and I started watching SportsCenter every single day. And there was just something intoxicating about being there in person and being in that sort of a community. And I started to just love the storylines and the players and the personalities and everything about it. And so I really think from that point on, sports was really part of being a sports fan was part of my identity. I was never much of an athlete.
I love that. Yeah. So here's the deal. 2024 is going to be remembered as the year of the Paris Olympics, the year of questionable politics on the field, and the year that the WNBA got a lot of attention. So it was kind of a massive year for women in sports overall, and that's what we're going to focus on today. But so much more happened, and a lot of it happened online. So today I brought in two people who live, breathe, eat sports, because not only have they spent their careers talking about the game, but they've also seen how some moments would not have happened without the internet. So let's take a break. When we come back, Madeline and Lindsay will bring me their favorite sports moments of the year and how the internet felt about them. We'll be right back after the break. It's always fun to dive into the latest rumors, like who's dating who, and who will be on the next season of our favorite show. Well, here's one rumor to squash: the idea that Discover isn't widely accepted. Truth is, Discover is accepted at 99% of places that take credit cards nationwide. That means it's accepted basically anywhere across the country. Don't pay attention to every rumor out there, but remember, it does pay to discover, based on the February 2024 Nielsen report. Learn more at discover.com/creditcard. Audible's Best of 2024 picks are here. Discover the year's top audiobooks, podcasts, and originals in all your favorite genres. From memoirs and sci-fi to mysteries and thrillers. From romance and well-being to fiction. Audible's carefully curated list in every category is the best way to hear 2024's Best of the Year in audio entertainment. Like the star-studded production of George Orwell's 1984, which both honors and reinvigorates the terrifying classic. It's one of the best original dramatizations out there. Or romance that hits the spot, like Emily Henry's Funny Story. Heartfelt memoirs, like Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson's Lovely One. Listen to the year's best fiction, like The Women by Kristen Hanna, and Percival Everett's brilliantly subversive James. Audible. There's more to imagine when you listen. Go to audible.com/ICYMI and discover all the year's best waiting for you. Hey listeners, hope you're enjoying today's show. If this is your first time listening, then welcome. We are thrilled to have you here. In case you missed it, our show comes out twice a week on Wednesdays and Saturdays, so make sure you never miss an episode. Like this past Wednesdays, when internet culture writer Steffi Tsao and I answered your questions about conspiracy theories at the Christmas table and what to do when your friends don't invite you to their wedding. And we're back. I am here with sports writers and podcast hosts Madeline Hill and Lindsay Gibbs. So I want to jump right in and run through maybe our 4 or 5 top sports moments of the year. Madeline, I'll go to you first.
Oh my God, there were so many incredible women's sports moments this year, but the one that I think stands out to me only because I was there in person, which I cannot believe I'm even saying, but I got to attend the final day of women's gymnastics during the Olympics, which, if you remember, was famously Jordan Childs was awarded the bronze medal. And then, as we know very quickly after, it was taken away. But seeing Simone and Jordan bow down to Rebecca Andrade, the Brazilian gymnast who won gold that day, was just unbelievable. It was not only, selfishly just a great moment to write about. I'm just thinking about oh my God, I can't believe I'm here witnessing this in the flesh. But also, I just think it was such an incredible series of events for gymnastics this Olympics, and to have it kind of cap off with not only an incredible moment of them kind of bowing down to Rebecca when she won, but then also selfishly the drama unfolding with the medal, to me was the perfect balance of on the court, on the mat drama, and off the mat drama happening at once.
I'm so jealous right now.
I have to shout out my mom gave me her ticket for that to go. It was amazing. Going to the Olympics already is crazy and definitely a once in a lifetime experience, but to be able to go to gymnastics, I'm a kid who watched the struggling gymnast, Carrie Strug. Is it Carrie Strug? I believe.
Oh yes, Carrie Strug landing on one foot. Yes.
Oh my God, iconic. I'm gymnastics to me is the Summer Olympics. I just feel that is the Olympics for so many people, and being able to just witness. It was history, I guess. A dramatic unfolding of the final day was just insane. It was insane.
I'll also pick a moment that I was there in person for. It does make it more special when you're there. But the women's Final Four in general, in total, was remarkable. What a remarkable year for women's basketball in general. And it really started, we have to remember, with the college season, with South Carolina going undefeated and winning the championship. And of course, with Caitlin Clark taking Iowa all the way to the championship game. And in particular, that semifinal win, Connecticut over UConn, which came down to very last play, and a controversial foul call, and Paige Becker's, I think, offensive foul call. And it was just the excitement of the fans, the enormity of that moment. You know, I had been to the Final Four a couple years earlier in Minneapolis, and that was great. It was a great crowd. It was really exciting. But everything about this year took this to the next level. And it was so special to be a part of and to have the ratings afterwards. I mean, the women's championship, more viewers than the men's, which listen, my whole world is being bullish about women's sports and being right. Mm-hmm. And that exceeded my expectations. Mm-hmm. You know, I wasn't expecting that. So I don't think we're going to soon forget the fact that this college season got to end with the best team versus the best player. And it was such an important season. You don't often see that happen, right? To see those storylines that had engulfed the whole season, to see them actually get to play out on the biggest stage of the sport. So that's something I'll always remember. And I think we all will always remember is just the moment that women's basketball, it was undeniable. It couldn't be overlooked anymore.
Mm-hmm. I think now is like a great time just to talk about the Caitlin Clark of it all, the WNBA, everything that's been going on, because I think one of the greatest things about the narrative that's just kind of spanned women's basketball in 2024 is that there's so many entry points. Like, I think for you guys, it's obvious, like, you love the sport. The sports is what you do. For me, it was the fashion. Like, I was so into the tunnel fashion. I mean, my, like, top people were, like, Kelsey Plum wearing the, like, leather vest without the bra, being very Lenny Kravitz with it. Nika Mull, a name I did not know until I was like, wait, your fits are fire and I'm going to follow you on Insta. And I think there is something really interesting about the way that Instagram fashion, the way that people talk about the ability to do like couple fashion. So I'm thinking like DeWanna Bonner, Alyssa Thomas, like there were just so many reasons to invest in the WNBA this year. I'd love to ask you guys, do you think now that we're kind of at the end of 2024, can we attribute the rise to a person, the climate? Is it political? What are your guys' best guess for like how 2024 ended up being the year of the W? Madeline, I'll go to you first.
Yeah, I mean, I think people would point to Caitlin Clark, the Caitlin Clark effect. And yes, I mean, she is an incredible athlete. She has brought so many more eyeballs to the sport. And I do think that's obviously a big piece of it. But I actually think another piece is I think the role that social media has played in not only exposing people to these players, but also these players having their own brands on the internet. To your point about the tunnel fits, them posting their outfits. Like I interviewed Cameron Brink's stylist, the WNBA player, and like just seeing her post her outfits, like what she's wearing to other games, like when she's attending an NBA game, and kind of getting that behind the scenes look in their lives, I think has also really helped. And then them all over TikTok. Like I feel like every 5 seconds I'm seeing another video from either a WNBA player, a college women's basketball player. And to me, it was like almost like the FYP effect that just spread in some way. I feel like almost overshadowed the Caitlin Clark effect as like, oh, it's just a blanket statement. It's hard to just say, oh, Caitlin Clark being really amazing is the only reason more people are watching WNBA games. I mean, you look at Ellie the elephant, you know, the Liberty mascot. To me, Ellie the elephant not only is like a great representation for the Liberty, but you know, the in-game experience with Ellie is so incredible, but then also the online experience. I believe Ellie the elephant has over 100,000 followers on Instagram, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm like, to me, that is like, oh, people crave more of this content and have felt like they haven't gotten it. And I think social media has been a great way to be able to get more of the kind of behind the scenes stuff. I mean, at least for me, selfishly, that's what I'm interested in. And I think a lot of other people are interested in. That was a nice entry point, in addition to like those tunnel fit moments too that you saw so much during the season online.
Absolutely. It was a little bit of everything, right? The league has been building to this point. Women's basketball, women's college basketball has been building to this point. There were more games on linear television this year, and that's work that had been put in, you know, for decades to try and get there. And, you know, over the past couple years, NIL has really helped women's basketball because these stars, Caitlin Clark gets put in tons of commercials. Aaliyah Boston gets put in commercials. I mean, you can't watch women's basketball without during the commercials seeing their players in every other ad, which is something that 5 years ago was absolutely not the case. I think that these players being able to really own their identity on social media and via marketing early on in their careers is allowing them to own their brands, expand their brands, and just to have the public be familiar with it. You know, how many names of men's athletes do you just know kind of by social osmosis, you know, just by kind of existing in society, and seeing commercials and, you know, flipping on a talk show or seeing the tabloids. And I think, you know, women athletes are now getting to that point, and I think that's helped the W so much. But you also, I mean, we're at a point where all the franchises are doing well and growing. It really helps to have these billionaire owners with the Aces and the Liberty. So it's not just Caitlin Clark and everyone else, right? And I'm not dismissing the Caitlin Clark effect. Caitlin Clark is, I mean, there's nothing like it, the fan base that she has. But the reason it's really catching on is because it's not just her, because this foundation is so solid at this point, because there are so many other personalities, and because this world has been built by these players over decades. And so I think that's what's really exciting, is seeing it all kind of come together. You know, and I know that if you're a diehard fan, you're listening and you're thinking about all the different things you think that what WNBA did wrong this season and the ways they didn't capitalize on it. And I agree. I think they could have done a better job. But let me tell you, if this had been 5 years ago, like there's absolutely no way they would have been able to capitalize it in the way that they did. And ultimately, you know, we're talking about the biggest sports stories. What in the long run might end up being one of the biggest sports stories of this year might be this WNBA's new television deal, you know, for about $200 million a year and counting. And, you know, that's going to change the economics of the league forever. And honestly, I think they should have gotten more, but it's such an increase. And the league was ready to at least take partial advantage of this moment. And that's why you're going to see it turn into substantial growth.
Yeah.
I also think just something else to add was looking at the partnerships that the WNBA had this year. So thinking about the Glossier partnership, you know, the skincare makeup brand, to me, that's also really interesting entry point, especially for younger viewers, people who are interested in beauty, who maybe aren't traditional sports fans. And I'm curious, I would love to know what the numbers are behind the scenes on how partnerships like the Glossier one in particular impacted viewership. Did that impact follower numbers on the WNBA social handles? Because that was, to me, the perfect partnership for them.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of partnerships, I'm thinking of Skims as unfortunately having a huge year because not only are they doing these huge campaigns for the WNBA, they were outfitting the U.S. Olympics. And if we have men out here saying, I love my Skims, then unfortunately, Kim, you got me. You got me, and I am at Nordstrom now. While we're still in WNBA land, I did want to ask, are there any smaller moments that either you felt were maybe not the brightest moments of the W? In fact, they were L's. Anything comes to mind like that?
I mean, the name we haven't mentioned so far is Angel Reese. And,
let's talk about
Angel Reese's popularity has to be, it's its own beast, its own wonder of the world. The way she has mainstreamed and marketed herself, it's phenomenal. And the way she brings people in and people attached to her personality and she puts herself out there, it's so good for the game. And she's so good on the court, and I'm so excited to see her improve. But the dark spot was the racism. I mean, it cannot go overstated how tense times were in the WNBA and in the fandom this year as a bunch of new fans came into this world, a lot of them due to Caitlin Clark, who maybe had not ever watched a league before that was predominantly Black and had a large visible queer population and women that were comfortable being in that power. The league used to really tamper down. A lot of players would stay in the closet. They tried to dress like business casual. They would look like they were at Ann Taylor Loft, when they would go walk into their games. And it's just really in the past decade, especially the past 5 years, that players have really learned to embrace their sense of self-expression and, the full being of who they are. And the truth is the league is predominantly powerful Black women. And these women were portrayed as the antagonist to Caitlin Clark. And you had mainstream media people like Stephen A. Smith and Shannon Sharp calling these women jealous and petty and saying they were out to get her. And it was really ugly to see the way that Black athletes were painted as the ungrateful villains, and Caitlin Clark was painted as the perfect, white savior of the sport. And I hated watching that. And I think the league did not do a good enough job addressing it head on. And it came to not completely overshadow, because the playoffs were phenomenal and the championship series we got was great, but it was a black eye on the playoffs too. It came to roost there because the league had not properly dealt with it, had not properly stood up for its players. Before that, it had not given them any help to deal with social media bullying. And there's so many people who are just like, well, that's just part of getting more attention. But this was ugly, and this was much more sinister. And also, guess what? We don't have to accept the status quo for men's sports either. As women's sports are growing, we get to establish our own rules here. And we don't have to say, well, men take this sort of abuse, so women have to as well. No. That should not be the way that anyone is acting. So that was a huge, huge downside of the season for sure.
I was going to say exactly what Lindsay said, and I just echo and agree with everything that you said. I think there's so much more work that the league can do, and I agree. They don't need to mirror what the NBA is doing or what other men's leagues are doing, which is sometimes not anything. And then I think it is an opportunity in the off season to really step up and think about how they can make some changes so that these issues are not continuing to happen, and then they're not brushing them under the rug, because they're just going to continue to happen if they're not being addressed.
Yeah. Before we go to break, I just wanted to throw out a question. Are Asia Wilson and Bam Adebayo dating?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Maybe one of my favorite moments, the Miami mayor.
Okay, let me ask the question, because this is where my celebrity FOMO brain comes in, where I'm like, okay, now I'm interested. Do we think it's real? Do we think it's PR? What are the perspectives here, everyone?
It's been real. There have been whispers for years in W circles about this. The really, really big fans who just somehow know, there's always those fans that just somehow know everything. I heard them start whispering about this a long time ago. And apparently, so I have no confirmation myself, but I mean, she was at the thing when he was getting honored for being in the Olympics.
Yes.
And she was there, and her mom was there. And it's very obvious. They are not. They're too tall. You can't hide.
Oh, yeah.
They can't hide.
Yeah.
No, I also always say my favorite thing to talk about in the newsletter is the role of paparazzi photos and the outlet backgrid, if you're familiar with paparazzi photos. So backgrid, again, this is all alleged. My opinion, do with this information what you will. But typically, when celebrities have been paparazzied by backgrid in particular, it's planned, prepped in advance. And I have not seen that many backgrid photos of them, which to me indicates that it is real and it's not a PR relationship where they're trying to pose for cameras or posing out at brunch just to show that they're dating. Whereas I do know that there are other celebrities in sports and other industries who will do paparazzi walks, and the credit will be backgrid. And I feel oftentimes it's there's definitely some sort of arrangement going on here. Are the celebrities getting paid? Is it part of a SponCon deal? What's going on? So I agree. I do think it's very real. I think you wouldn't bring your mom to your event in Miami if it was a fake relationship. I just you're not involving families if it's fake.
Yeah. Okay. This is good. We have covered a lot of bases. We have the WNBA, we have Relationship Watch, and we still have so many more stories to talk about, including one that I personally felt was not covered enough. But before we get there, let's take a break. When we come back, Madeline and Lindsay will give me their top sports moments of the year. Audible's Best of 2024 picks are here. Discover the year's top audiobooks, podcasts, and originals in all your favorite genres. From memoirs and sci-fi to mysteries and thrillers. From romance and well-being to fiction. Audible's carefully curated list in every category is the best way to hear 2024's best of the year in audio entertainment. Like the star-studded production of George Orwell's 1984, which both honors and reinvigorates the terrifying classic. It's one of the best original dramatizations out there. Or romance that hits the spot, like Emily Henry's Funny Story. Heartfelt memoirs, like Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson's Lovely One. Listen to the year's best fiction, like The Women by Kristen Hanna, and Percival Everett's brilliantly subversive James. Audible. There's more to imagine when you listen. Go to audible.com/ICYMI and discover all the year's best waiting for you. This episode is brought to you by Sax.com. There's joy in finding the perfect gift for the ones you love, but it can be a challenge. Sax.com's holiday gift guide makes it easy. Whether you're surprising your hard-to-shop for sister with a Chloe bracelet bag or gifting your partner a memorable scent from Gucci, at Sax.com, there's holiday inspiration for every personality on your list. I love using Sax.com because it is clean, easy to use, and so fun to scroll around for inspiration. I'm currently on the hunt for a really nice winter coat, and I'm also looking to put together some fun holiday looks, especially with all these Christmas parties coming around the corner. Now, thankfully, Sax has me covered because they have everything my friends have been begging me for, from Le Labo candles to Jo Malone London perfumes. And while I'm there, I might as well throw in these really cute Michael Kors boots I've been dying to gift myself. Sax.com's hand-picked guide can help take the stress out of the holidays. Add instant cheer to your home with some bright decor. Find gifts guaranteed to bring joy to everyone this holiday season at Sax.com. That's Sax.com for the ultimate holiday gift guide and all the shopping inspiration you need. It's always fun to dive into the latest rumors, like who's dating who, and who will be on the next season of our favorite show. Well, here's one rumor to squash: the idea that Discover isn't widely accepted. Truth is, Discover is accepted at 99% of places that take credit cards nationwide. That means it's accepted basically anywhere across the country. Don't pay attention to every rumor out there, but remember, it does pay to discover. Based on the February 2024 Nielsen report. Learn more at discover.com/credit card. And we're back. So I am going to start off this segment a twist because there is one story that I really could not stop thinking about this year. And it's a story that kind of just ended, but it's actually a bigger deal beyond the season. And this is the controversy surrounding the San Jose State women's volleyball team. Checking in. Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here's the deal. Brooke Slusser is the co-captain of the San Jose State women's volleyball team. Earlier this season, she joined a lawsuit accusing one of her teammates of being a transgender woman, saying that her teammates' participation in the sport posed, quote, a safety threat to her teammates and opponents. And Brooke has played with this teammate for 2, now 3 seasons. They were roommates. Brooke allegedly only found out about her teammate's gender identity recently, and she took it upon herself to join a lawsuit that was led by an anti-trans athlete and current and former conference players and her assistant coach. And they sued the NCAA. They say they deserve an emergency injunction to disqualify her teammate from playing. And this kind of started to become a bigger and bigger story because all season, one by one, opposing teams were like canceling games. They were forfeiting games. Most of them would not say why they were canceling. But the University of Nevada, Reno, they specifically said they, quote, refuse to participate in any match that advances injustice against female athletes. To make it even more vile, instead of playing that match on the same day, there was a rally in Reno that the captain of that volleyball team spoke at, advocating for the exclusion of transgender women in women's sports. Now, San Jose State, as a team, they ended their season with a better score this year than last. They haven't played in the national championship since 2001, which was a big issue for them. Their assistant coach was suspended because she filed a Title IX complaint. And all of this is happening with like very, very, very real consequences boiling down to the fact that a co-captain outed her own teammate, and she is not publicly transgender. Therefore, we are not naming her, which is something that the New York Times, ESPN, CNN, they're also not doing. Before I even step into this, I just wanted to ask, what was your guys' reaction to this, and why might this matter beyond college volleyball?
I mean, transphobia has taken over the coverage of women's sports, and there are certain, I call them grifters. I mean, I don't think there's any easier way to say this, on the right, who have made this their pet issue and are looking for any way to exploit people's ignorance about trans issues and to exploit their paternal nature over women's sports, even though most of the people who, are now on these save women's sports bandwagons don't actually want to do anything that would actually help women's sports. It's devastating and it's infuriating, and it's just going to keep happening. And it's not surprising that this happened. This is going to keep happening, and it's going to keep impacting women everywhere, trans women and cisgender women. The amount of speculation that's going to go into anyone who looks a little different, or maybe is a little bit taller, or a little bit more muscular, or presents in any way other than ultra feminine, there's going to be speculation. And this is going to happen at the youth level. It's going to happen at all levels. It's going to go against cisgender women who have naturally occurring high levels of testosterone, as we've seen in different spectrums of cases at the Olympics and in boxing, and recently in women's soccer against Barbara Banda. In both cases, these were women who were born women, raised women, always women, but it didn't stop the transphobes from making this their pet issue. And I think what we've seen is a few small special interest groups latch onto this issue and use it as a wedge issue to divide this country. And it was used predominantly in the campaigns we just saw. And the left did a horrible job counteracting it. They completely cowered and completely ignored the attacks and just tried to go on and pretend like it wasn't happening, which is not which just let the fear mongering and the lies spread. So I'm just devastated for this player and for all trans kids everywhere who had to watch this play out. I'm furious at Riley Gaines and her cohort who are using transphobia to make themselves money. And I keep saying angry, but I'm angry at the way women's sport, something I love and something that is about inclusion and is about greatness and is about coming together and is a safe space for so many in the LGBTQ community. I'm so mad that protecting women's sports is being used as a way to spread hate against people.
Yeah, I echo everything you said. Candice, when you were going through the story, I was just shaking my head because this story, I remember hearing about it when it came out, and it's devastating. And it's also horrifying and really scary. And you think about this story and how there are so many other stories like this across the country, all across different age groups of sports. This isn't just an NCAA problem. This is really an American sports problem and an American problem at large, in my opinion. And I think, to Lindsay's point, if there's not education done, then none of this is going to change, I think we're continuing to see these issues. They're not going to go away. And now I'm very scared we're going to see even more stories like this, unfortunately, come out. And until the left, I think, steps up to the plate and actually attacks these issues head on, nothing's going to change. And it's devastating to think about, the impact on this poor player's life, to think about how many other trans athletes are potentially scared that a lawsuit like this may come down on them for their team and their own collegiate experience. And then thinking about just younger athletes and thinking about younger kids who want to play sports and are going to run into these same issues if they are within systems that are not set up to support them and protect them. It's just devastating.
I'm about to go on my Stephen A. Smith viral rant for another 2
Do
seconds.
it. Please. Please go.
This
Go,
story
Candice.
makes me angry for 7 million reasons. The first one just being, I love volleyball. I really loved watching it at the Olympics this year. USA especially really represented on the men's and women's side. There were narratives that were so compelling to watch. And the reason I love volleyball is because, like, they're all about sportsmanship. You know, my favorite thing is when they would like literally lose a point and the team would still like come back to me and be like, good job, high fives. And I thought that was so cute because I'm like, in an arena where like toxic masculinity is so deeply embedded into every sport, but also industry, there was something very light and antithesis to that. And then you look at the fact that like women's volleyball is like one of the only sports where women at the collegiate level get more attention than men. Like, I realized just now, my high school never had a men's volleyball team. And I just think about the fact that, like, there is something about the way that these women as, like, collegiate volleyball players, they have this platform. They are airing games live on TV. And this co-captain took that opportunity to come at her teammate and to put her in genuine danger to the point where governors are tweeting about her. Trump is talking about her and saying, like, I am going to instate these laws against da-da-da-da. And I just think that is the antithesis of volleyball, which is that it's not about you. You are not above a player. You're not above your team. You are not above the sport. And I am so mad at how vile this person was to someone that... It's so weird. This morning I was looking at the box score of their latest game against Colorado State. And first off, they're both starters. So like they're both good. We don't have to talk about that. And you look down the box score and it's like her teammate sets her up. She sets her teammate up. They're passing to each other. And that's the thing I kind of love about sports, which is that you see what's going on screen. It is not the narrative behind the scenes. There is always something deeper, something always more layered. And I think my now issue... I hate that no one has done a really good piece about this. I think a lot of outlets, they're trying to like update headlines, da-da-da-da. And I think what I'm really seeking is like, I need one just good, concise, level-headed piece that really like kind of makes a statement about how vile this whole thing has been. Because I think people have been really wishy-washy about it. And I don't love it.
I couldn't agree more, Candice. And as someone, I played volleyball my entire life.
Yeah.
I did travel volleyball. I played like club, not at a Division I level in college. And I think the thing that hits home too, what you mentioned, is how much the camaraderie and the group effort it takes to win a game. I mean, this is not an individual sport. This is a team sport through and through. But then also to your point about coming in for huddles, supporting the team, even when you lose a point. I mean, I remember in practice, we would practice the cheers we would do during the games. I'm sure if you watch any of the Olympic volleyball coverage, you see the U.S. women's team, they're all standing on the sidelines the entire game. They're all really engaged, even when they're losing. And to think that they're essentially in some ways kind of putting on a show, to your point, like you don't really know what's going on off the court. Obviously you do in this case because of the story, but it's like you have all this camaraderie. It's so much about teamwork in volleyball. And then off the field, all of this horrible, negative, nasty name calling, outing people is happening is just like completely opposite of, I think, at least in my experience, what it's like playing volleyball and being a teammate, what it means to be supporting your teammates and to fully not be supporting a teammate who you're playing with during games. It's just shocking and really devastating.
We have to get more women in sports speaking out against this. Like that is how this is going to change. And, you know, there are a few, but not nearly enough. And you know, not to kind of circle back, but we're talking about biggest moments, best moments, favorite moments in sports this year. And I think one of the most important moments was also at the Final Four when Dawn Staley said she would support transgender women in women's basketball. And, you know, it was an Outkick reporter, I hate to even say that name, but who was there in the press conference, asked her about the question clearly to try and get a gotcha moment, you know, and Dawn took a beat. She knew that he was putting her in the firing line. This was a huge press conference. And she said, yeah, I think women should play. If they're a woman, you know, if they say they're a woman, they should be able to play. And, you know, she didn't get into specifics, but that wasn't necessary at that time. It was, we need more Dawn Staleys. We need more people. And I did a piece coming out of the Final Four where I talked to trans fans around the country about what that meant to them, about having Dawn Staley stand up for them on that platform. And that's the only way. We have to have more than that.
Yeah. And volleyball subreddit, I'm also coming at you because I also don't like your opinions. And so step up, speak up, do something about that. Volleytalk.com. Okay, I'm off. Okay. Thank you for letting me get that off my chest. I now want to turn to something that is hopefully more celebrant, more worth remembering. Madeline, what's like the ultimate sports moment that you want to like talk about from this year?
Oh my God. I had a hard time picking, but I mean, the gymnastics moment was a close second, but truly my number one moment this year, which also came from the Olympics, hear me out, was the ray gun breakdancing.
Okay.
Was not expecting that.
Okay.
Weren't expecting that. I could have said Taylor Swift. I could have talked about Caitlin Clark, but I actually think the ray gun moment tells us more about, I think, the discussions around women's sports more than anything. So the ray gun moment for me, I mean, as someone, I cover stories that happen off the field. I am not an on the field expert. I truly couldn't tell you what most players' stat lines are. That's not what my expertise is. I defer to people like Lindsay, who do a much better job about actually explaining the context of what's happening. But I think for me, what was really interesting about that, one, it was a new sport in the Olympics. So there's already this fascination around that. But I think then two, I would argue that is one of the biggest moments in pop culture this year. People were dressing up like ray gun for Halloween, which would you have ever thought that some random breakdancer from the Olympics would have people dressing up like them for Halloween? I even saw dogs dressed up like ray gun at a dog Halloween parade. And I think for me, what was really interesting about it was, one, it was a new sport, but two, it felt like it was in the cultural conversation for way longer than many viral things are, especially nowadays, as we know, with the X of it all being just kind of a dumpster fire social media website. The algorithm, I felt like I was seeing ray gun content longer than I saw Simone Biles bowing down with Jordan Childs content, longer than I saw Taylor Swift showing up to a game content. For whatever reason, I think it struck a chord with the casual sports fans, people who are into pop culture, people who are into the drama of how did this woman get into the Olympics? How did she become the representative for Australia? People who are casual Olympics fans. But then also I found traditional sports reporters were covering the story, which to me, I was like, oh, this is a really interesting kind of intersection of all these different groups coming together, fascinated by this one weird breakdancer who, I can't breakdance, so I'd probably have even worse moves, but they definitely were some interesting choices that she made on the dance floor. But I do think, at least for me, it was the most fascinating story that really captivated so many different groups. I mean, I had my dad, who was almost in his 70s, texting me about ray gun. And then I also had a younger cousin texting me about ray gun. So it just kind of spanned generations. And yes, I could very easily say Taylor Swift, Simone Biles, Caitlin Clark. And yes, I will talk about them till the end of time. But I actually think the ray gun moment said more about kind of what's been going on in society and culture at large, more than these other larger moments in some ways.
I love that.
That's perfect. And so internet-y too, right? Which is like kind of the beauty of her being Australian. The Olympics are in Paris, but we are up at 4 a.m. and we are watching breakdancing Group B live.
Exactly. I'm watching breaking, and I'm like, I kept watching more of it, and I couldn't stop consuming it. And then watching people do like her dances on TikTok, trying to do it themselves. And then ray gun kind of becoming an icon as well. Like she wasn't really being made fun of. It was more like she was being celebrated online and among her teammates for Team Australia. It was just amazing. I don't know. For me, weirdly, that moment just felt like it seemed silly, but I actually think it had more of an impact than we may think.
That is a great one. Lindsay, you are going to end our episode, so I'm really excited to hear what is the number one sports moment that you will remember from this year.
Okay, well, I have to cheat. I can't pick just one. If I had to pick one, I think it would be the New York Liberty finally winning the WNBA championship. That franchise has been through so much. To see Jonquel Jones finally get that trophy, to see Sabrina Ionescu get her crowning moment, to see them have a parade in New York City. A franchise that was in Westchester County playing in front of like 2,000 people in a rec center a few years ago. And to have a series go 5 games against the Minnesota Lynx, it was was so good. And it was so nice after all of the extra stuff this WNBA season, to have the game, the finals series just kind of come down to the best of basketball, and sometimes really ugly basketball, but that's okay. Tell me a playoff series that does not include a lot of ugly play at that point of the season. That was special.
Mm-hmm. Do we have a prediction of what will be the big sport in 2025? Madeline?
Well, I do feel like it's a sport that already gets plenty of attention, but I think tennis is going to have a bigger moment.
Would love that.
I love watching tennis, and women's tennis to me is far more interesting than the men's. No shade to Roger Federer or Andy Murray or any of the legends, but I do feel like women's tennis is going to get an even bigger spotlight. And thinking about those stars, thinking about Coco Gauff, she's amazing. I also think about just like when you look at American tennis players in particular, there are a lot of really incredible women's American tennis players, and the men, they're good, but they're definitely not as good as the women. And thinking about the spotlight on them and thinking about what bigger moments they will have. I mean, as you know, Anna Wintour, the editor-in-chief of Vogue, is famously a really huge tennis fan, and thinking about how the platform that she's kind of built for these tennis stars, how that's going to continue next year, especially thinking about some of the younger American tennis players. And then I just think we'll see more kind of off the field stuff. I think Netflix did a documentary that came out, I think, 2 years ago about tennis players. I think we'll see more and more off the field content around tennis players, especially women's tennis players, and kind of the behind the scenes moments that are happening in ways that I'm personally very excited about as a big tennis fan. So I hope that tennis will get even more eyeballs on it than it already does. But I think we could see some more off the field moments being covered by larger outlets, and hopefully some more documentaries or even a reality show. I'll take anything.
Oh my God. I would watch, but and also let's not disregard Luca Guadagnino with the Challengers bump.
Thank you. Why? How could I forget? My God. Yes. Yes.
Okay. Lindsay, what about you? What do you predict will be like the big sport to boom in 2025?
To me, it's kind of a tie between softball and volleyball. I think we're really waiting for them to have their pro moments. So the college games have been growing so much. But what is next? And, softball, the Women's College World Series is one of the biggest sporting events in the world, period. I mean, it's just, if you are not watching the Women's College World Series in the summer, what are you even doing? It is so entertaining, and it gets great ratings on ESPN. And you're going to see this year Athletes Unlimited, which has had its softball leagues for the past few years, but kind of almost a fantasy version of a softball league where the players switch teams on a weekly basis. It's not kind of your traditional league, but they are going to a more traditional style league and launching it with some really high profile names behind it. So that should come out this summer. Really curious what that's going to be. And then you have also two pro volleyball leagues that are in the works. One already launched last year, and then you have another league that I don't really understand the format of it, but I'm excited to see it. It's got a deal with ESPN. It's called Love Volleyball, LOVB. Yes. So I think that we're just going to have to see if these, they can learn from what we've seen in women's soccer and women's basketball and really take the next steps, because their college games are so popular right now. And it's time to figure out a way for these players to have professional, well-paying leagues in the United States.
Okay, that's the show. I want to thank Madeline Hill and Lindsay Gibbs for joining me on today's episode. You can find Madeline on her Substack, Impersonal Foul, and Lindsay Gibbs at the Power Plays newsletter and on fellow Slate podcast, Hang Up and Listen. We'll be back in your feed on Wednesday, so definitely subscribe. That way, you never miss an episode. Leave us a rating and a review in Apple or Spotify, and tell your friends about us. You can follow us on Twitter at ICYMI_pod, and you can always drop us a note at ICYMI@slate.com. ICYMI is produced by Alexandra Botti and me, Candice Lim. Daisy Rosario is our senior supervising producer, and Alicia Montgomery is Slate's vice president of audio. See you online or on the tennis court.